Remembering a memory. Memory is the retention of information. It is not probable that you will remember a whole memory at once. Similarly, different types of tests trigger different parts of memory. We will focus on long-term memory, more specifically implicit memory, explicit memory, and the types of ways to retrieve explicit memories. An implicit memory is used unconsciously and can affect thoughts and behaviors. There is no way to retrieve an implicit memory because they are formed unconsciously. The most common type of implicit memory is a procedural memory, which is formed by habitual learning. An example of that would be walking. An explicit memory is also known as a declarative memory. It involves the conscious recollection of a memory. An example of declarative memory would be recalling your phone number. Because explicit memories are associated with conscious thoughts, there are certain ways to retrieve a memory. The three main ways to remember an explicit memory are free recall, cued recall, and recognition. Free recall. To recall would be to produce a response. It usually underestimates the actual amount you know. However, a low recall does not mean you do not remember the memory. Free recall is the ability to elaborate on any topic on the information you can recall in that moment. Free recall is used not only on short answer responses on tests, but also used in teaching on the spot. Free recall is what allows us to talk in depth about things we have learned. In order to measure free recall, we must define it with an operant definition. An example would be to measure the amount of times a person states a fact they learned. Cued recall. Cued recall is more accurate than free recall because you receive significant hints about the material. An example of cued recall would be giving the subject a list of words and telling them to state the words that were animals. This can be measured by counting the amount of words they remembered from the list that were associated with animals. Being given a hint gives people more accurate memories. This is important for real-world application because the facts produced through a conversation are triggered by other person's response, and therefore could provide more accurate facts than free recall. Recognition is when someone chooses the correct item among several options. You usually recognize more items than you recall. An example of recognition would be a multiple choice exam. You could measure recognition with a % correct grade on a multiple choice exam. Recognition is more accurate than recall, so furthermore, being presented with choices allows someone to pick the most appropriate response and therefore could provide an even more reliable response. An implicit memory and explicit memory retrieve the unconscious and conscious memories within. When trying to retrieve the conscious memories, there are three main ways to remember: free recall, cued recall, and recognition.